Right. Chapter 13 in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. The big day arrives. The sun was shining brightly on the morning of the big day, but the ground was still white with snow and the air was very cold. Outside the gates of the Wonka factory, enormous crowds of people had gathered to watch the 5 lucky ticket holders going in. The excitement was tremendous. It was just before 10 o'clock. The crowds were pushing and shouting, and policemen, with arms linked, were trying to hold them back from the gates. Right beside the gates in the small group that was carefully shielded from the crowds by the police stood the 5 famous children, together with their grown-ups who had come with them. The tall, bony old figure of Grandpa Joe could be seen standing quietly among them, and beside him, holding tightly onto his hand, was little Charlie Bucket himself. All the children, except Charlie, had both their mothers and fathers with them, and it was a good thing that they had. Otherwise, the whole party might have gotten out of hand. They were so eager to get going that their parents were having to hold them back with force to prevent them from climbing over the gates. "Be patient," cried the fathers. "Be still. It's not time yet. It's not 10 o'clock." Behind him, Charlie Bucket could hear the shouts of the people in the crowd as they pushed and fought to get a glimpse of the famous children. "There's that Violet Beauregard," he heard someone shouting. "That's her all right. I can remember her face from the newspapers." "And you know what?" somebody else shouted back. "She's still chewing that dreadful old piece of gum she's had for 3 months. You look at her jaws. They're still working at it." "Who's the big fat boy?" "That's Augustus Gloop." "So it is. Enormous, isn't he?" Here's the 5 famous children and their family. Fantastic! Who's the kid with the picture of the Lone Ranger stenciled on his windbreaker? That's Mike DeVee. He's the television fiend. He must be crazy. Look at all those crazy pistols he's got hanging all over him. "The one I want to see is Vierica Salt," shouted another voice in the crowd. "She's the girl whose father bought up 500,000 candy bars and then made the workers in his peanut factory unwrap every one of them until they found a golden ticket. He gives her anything she wants, absolutely anything. She only has to start screaming for it and she gets it. Dreadful, isn't it? Shocking, I call it. Which do you think she is?" "That one, over there on the left, the little girl in the silver mink coat." "Which one is Charlie Bucket?" "Charlie Bucket? He must be that skinny little shrimp standing beside the old fellow who looks like a skeleton, right close to us. Just there, see him?" "Why hasn't he got a coat on in this cold weather?" "Don't ask me. Maybe he can't afford one." "Jeepers, he must be freezing." Charlie, standing only a few paces away from the speaker, gave Grandpa Joe's hand a squeeze, and the old man looked down at Charlie and smiled. Somewhere in the distance, a church clock began striking 10. Very slowly, with a loud creaking of the rusty hinges, the great iron gates of the factory began to swing open. The crowd became suddenly silent. The children stopped jumping about. All eyes were fixed upon the gates. "There he is!" somebody shouted. "That's him!" And so it was. I wonder who they could be talking about. Chapter 14. Mr. Willy Wonka. Mr. Wonka was standing all alone just inside the open gates of the factory. And what an extraordinary little man he was. He had a black top hat on his head. He wore a tailcoat made of beautiful plum-colored velvet. His trousers were bottled green. His gloves were pearly gray. And in one hand he carried a fine gold-topped walking cane. Covering his chin, there was a small, neat, pointed black beard, a goatee. And his eyes were most marvelously bright. They seemed to be sparkling and twinkling you all at the same time. The whole face, in fact, was alight with fun and laughter. And oh, how clever he looked! How quick and sharp and full of life! He kept making quick, jerky little movements with his head, cocking it this way and that, and taking everything in with those bright, twinkling eyes. He was like a squirrel in the quickest of his movements, like a quick, clever old squirrel from the park. Suddenly, he did a funny little skipping dance in the snow, then spread his arms out wide, and he smiled at the 5 children who were clustered near the gates, and he called out, "Welcome, my little friends! Welcome to the factory!" His voice was high and fluty. "Will you come forward once at a time, please?" he called out. "And bring your parents. Then show me your golden ticket and give me your name. Who's first?" The big, fat boy stepped up. "I'm Augustus Gloop," he said. "Augustus!" cried Mr. Wonka, seizing his hand and pumping it up and down with terrific force. "My dear boy, how good to see you! Delighted, charmed, overjoyed to have you with us. Are these your parents? How nice! Come in, come in. That's right. Step through the gates." Mr. Wonka was clearly just as excited as everybody else. "My name," the next child to go forward, "is Vereker Salt. My dear Vereker, how do you do? What a pleasure this is. You do have an interesting name, don't you? I always thought that a Vereker was short for a wart that you got on the sole of your foot. But I must be wrong, mustn't I? How pretty you look in that lovely mink coat. I'm so glad you could come. Dear me, this is going to be such an exciting day. I do hope you enjoy it. I'm sure you will. I know you will. Your father? How are you? Mr. Salt and Mrs. Salt? Overjoyed to see you. Yes, the ticket is quite in order. Please go in." The next two children, Violet Beardegard and Mike Tavie, came forward to have their tickets examined and to have their hands practically pumped off their shoulders by the energetic Mr. Wonka. And last of all, a small nervous voice whispered, "Charlie Bucket?" "Charlie!" cried Mr. Wonka. "Well, well, well! So there you are! You are the one who found the ticket only yesterday, aren't you?" "Yes, yes, I read all about it in this morning's papers. Just in time, my dear boy. I'm so glad, so happy for you. And this, your grandfather? Delighted to meet you, sir. Overjoyed, enraptured, enchanted, all right, excited. Is everybody in now? 5 children? Yes? Good. Now, will you please follow me? Our tour is about to begin, but do keep together. Please don't wander off by yourselves. I shouldn't like to lose any of you at this stage in the proceedings. Oh, dear me, no." Charlie glanced over his shoulder and saw the great iron entrance gate slowly closing behind him. The crowds on the outside were still pushing and shouting. Charlie took a last look at them. Then, as the gates closed with a clang, all sight of the outside world disappeared. "Here we are!" cried Mr. Wonka, trotting along in front of the group. "Through the big red door, please. That's right. It's nice and warm inside. I have to keep it warm inside my factory because of my workers. My workers are used to extremely hot climate. They can't stand the cold. They'd perish if they went in outdoors in this weather. They'd freeze to death." "But who are your workers?" asked Augustus Gloop. "All in good time, my dear boy," said Mr. Wonka, smiling at Augustus. "Be patient. You shall see everything as we go along. Are you all inside? Good. Would you mind closing the door? Thank you." Charlie Bucket found himself standing in a long corridor that stretched away in front of him as far as he could see. The corridor was so wide that a car could easily have been driven along it. The walls were pale pink, and the light was soft and pleasant. "How lovely and warm," whispered Charlie. "I know, and what a marvelous smell," answered Grandpa Joe, taking a long, deep sniff. All the most wonderful smells in the world seemed to be mixed up in the air around them. The smell of roasting coffee and burnt sugar and melting chocolate and mint and violets and crushed hazelnuts and apple blossom and caramel and lemon peel. Oh! And far away in the distance, from the heart of the great factory, came a muffled roar of the energy as though some monstrous, gigantic machine were spinning its wheels at a breakneck speed. "Now this, my dear children," said Mr. Wonka, raising his voice above the noise, "this is the main corridor. Will you please hang your coats and hats on those pegs over there, and then follow me? That's the way. Good. Everyone ready? Come on, then. Here we go." He trotted off rapidly down the corridor with the tails of his plum-colored velvet coat flapping behind him, and the visitors all hurried after him. It was quite a large party of people. When you come to think of it, there were 9 grown-ups and 5 children, 14 in all, so you can imagine that there was a good deal of pushing and shoving as they hustled and bustled down the passage, trying to keep up with the swift little figure in front of them. "Come on!" cried Mr. Wonka. "Get a move on, please. We'll never get around today if you dawdle like this." Soon he turned right off the main corridor into a slightly narrower passage. Then he turned left, then left again, then right, then left, then right, then right, then left. The place was a gigantic rabbit warren, with passages leading this way and that in every direction. Don't you let go of my hand, Charlie, whispered Grandpa Joe. Notice how all these passages are sloping downwards, cried Mr. Wonka. We are now going underground. All the most important rooms in my factory are deep down below the surface. Why is that? Somebody asked. There wouldn't be nearly enough space for them up on top, answered Mr. Wonka. These rooms we are going to see are enormous. They're larger than football fields. No buildings in the world would be big enough to house them, but down here, underneath the ground, I've got all the space I want. There's no limit, so as long as I hollow it out. Mr. Wonka turned right. He turned left. He turned right again. The passages were sloping steeper and steeper downhill now. Then suddenly, Mr. Wonka stopped. In front of him, there was a shiny metal door. The party crowded around. On the door, in large letters, it said, "The Chocolate Room." The Chocolate Room, Chapter 15. An important room this is, cried Mr. Wonka, taking a bunch of keys from his pocket and slipping one into the keyhole of the door. This is the nerve center of the whole factory, the heart of the whole business, and so beautiful. I insist upon my rooms being beautiful. I can't abide ugliness in factories. In we go, then, but do be careful, my dear children. Don't lose your heads. Don't get overexcited. Keep very calm. Mr. Wonka opened the door. 5 children and 9 grown-ups pushed their way in, and oh, what an amazing sight it was now met their eyes. They were looking down upon a lovely valley. There were green meadows on either side of the valley, and along the bottom of it there flowed a great brown river. What is more, there was a tremendous waterfall halfway along the river, a steep cliff over which the water curled and rolled in a solid sheet, and then went crashing down into a boiling, churning whirlpool of froth and spray. Below the waterfall, and this was the most astonishing sight of all, a whole mass of enormous glass pipes were dangling down into the river from somewhere high up in the ceiling. They were really enormous, those pipes. There must have been a dozen of them at least, and they were sucking up the brownish, muddy water from the river and carrying it away to goodness knows where. And because they were made of glass, you could see the liquid flowing and bubbling inside them. And above the noise of the waterfall, you could hear the never-ending sucking sound of the pipes as they did their work. Graceful trees and bushes were growing along the river banks. Weeping willows and adlers and tall clumps of bushes with their pink and red blossoms. In the meadow there were thousands of buttercups. There, cried Mr. Wonka, dancing up and down and pointing his gold-topped cane at the great brown river. It's all chocolate. Every drop of that river is hot melted chocolate of the finest quality, the very finest quality. There's enough chocolate in there to fill every bathtub in the entire country, and all the swimming pools as well. Isn't it terrific? Just look at my pipes. They're sucking up the chocolate and carrying it away to all the other rooms in the factory where it is needed. Thousands of gallons an hour, my dear children. Thousands and thousands of gallons. The children and their parents were too flabbergasted to speak. They were staggered. They were dumbfounded. They were bewildered and dazzled. There's a picture of Wonka in front of his waterfall. They were completely bowled over by the hugeness of the whole thing. They simply stood and stared. The waterfall is most important, Mr. Wonka went on. It mixes the chocolate. It churns it up. It pounds it and beats it, and it makes it light and frothy. No other factory in the world mixes its chocolate by waterfall. But it's the only way to do it properly. The only way. And do you like my trees? He cried, pointing with his stick. And my lovely bushes? Don't you think they look pretty? I told you I hated ugliness. And of course they're all edible. All made of something different and delicious. And do you like my meadow? Do you like my grass and my buttercups? The grass you're standing on, my dear little ones, is made of a new kind of soft, minty sugar that I've just invented. I call it swudge. Try a blade, please do. It's delectable." Automatically, everyone bent down to pick up one blade of grass. Everybody, that is, except for Augustus Gloop. He took a whole big handful. And Violet Beauregarde, before tasting her blade of grass, took the piece of world record breaking chewing gum out of her mouth and stuck it carefully behind her ear. "Isn't it wonderful?" whispered Charlie. "Hasn't it got a wonderful taste, Grandpa?" "I could eat a whole field," said Grandpa Joe, grinning with delight. "I could go around on all fours like a cow and eat every blade of grass in the field." "Try a buttercup," cried Mr. Wonka. "They're even nicer." Suddenly the air was filled with screams of excitement. The screams came from Virka Salt. She was pointing frantically to the other side of the river. "Look! Look! Over there!" she screamed. "What is it? He's moving. He's walking. It's a little person. It's a little man down there below the waterfall." Everybody stopped picking buttercups and stared across the river. "She's right, Grandpa," cried Charlie. "It is a little man. Can you see him?" "I see him, Charlie," said Grandpa Joe excitedly. And now everybody started shouting at once. "There's two of 'em!" "Oh my gosh, there is!" "There's more than two!" "There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5!" "What are they doing? Where did they come from?" Who could they be? Who are they? Children and parents alike rushed down the edge of the river to get a closer look. "Aren't they fantastic? No higher than my knee. Look at their long, funny hair." The tiny men, they were no larger than medium-sized dolls, had stopped what they were doing, and now they were staring back across the river at the visitors. One of them pointed towards the children and then whispered something to the other four, and all 5 of them burst into peals of laughter. "But they can't be real people," Charlie said. "Of course they're real people," Mr. Wonka answered. "They're Oompa Loompas." Let's stop at chapter 16, the Oompa Loompas.